Hello. Yesterday I did a talk at the SoderWorld Wellness Center in Chicago suburbs, South Chicago suburbs. I was working there just before COVID started. I did a few things for them and it worked out real nice. We're just getting back together and we just did a little talk about the tarot and why it works. So I had this videoed, so I thought I'd put it up here and share it with you. I'm going to put a link down to SoderWorld Wellness Center down here in the description too, if you want to check it out. If you're from the area, you might want to check them out. They got a lot of nice things going on there. Good bunch of people, and it's good. So here we are, a little talk I did on the tarot at SoderWorld. Okay, good. Well, it's good to see everybody.
Hey.
My name is Vincent Patici, professional tarot reader. I got my notes right here, in case I forget something. Professional tarot reader for 30 years, my wife and I. She's a psychic. She didn't have to come here today. She's watching it right now at home, just visually. And but I've been involved with the tarot for 50 years, over 50 years. 69 is when I started. So I would say that I consider myself to be a master of tarot reader. If you're doing anything for 50 years, you better be a master at it by then, because if you're not, there's something wrong with you. Well, before I start, that's my tip jar. You don't have to give anything, just enjoy the class. I don't have any money. If somebody said, well, there's a tip jar, I don't have any money to give anybody. I use credit cards now. But if you want to put something in there, then you can go right ahead. I take jewelry, wristwatches, anything you like. So, but anyway, what you're going to be learning here today is, what I'm talking about is the mystery of the tarot. And now we can explain why it works. That's been the biggest mystery of the tarot, is why does it work? We've never been able to explain that before. And because of that, the tarot has been at a standstill as far as its advancement. You can't improve something if you don't know why it works. I've been reading for 50 years, like I said. I've seen my world improve in a lot of different ways. We all have, you know. And but the tarot's been a standstill because you can't improve it. The cards have changed. When I first got involved with the tarot, they had the Tarot Marseille, and that was it. It was like playing cards. You want a deck of playing cards, they all look the same. Then the next year, they came out with the Rider-Waite deck, reintroduced that back again, and there's such a nice artsy deck that people started getting inspired to make their own deck based on that deck, and now you have hundreds of different decks, and you don't know which one to get. You know, so the tarot, as far as the decks go, they've improved, but the application of the reading hasn't moved at all. It's been the same ever since it's started out. Nothing's really happened to the cards since then. Jean-Baptiste Alliette, 1700s, first professional tarot reader on record. Went by the name Attila, Alliette spelled backwards. And he's the first one we have on records. He wrote his first book around 1770, and in that book he says, to discover the magic of the tarot would be like finding a needle in a heap of hay. That's how he put it. So in other words, we don't know why it works. But then he goes on to explain, but if you do this, this, and this, and this a certain way, you get good results. 100 years later, Dr. N. Cossé went by the pen name of Pappas, wrote Tarot of the Bohemians, 1880s. It's still a classic book today. In that book, the second paragraph of his preface starts out by saying, its construction and application have not yet been revealed so far as I know. In other words, we still don't know why it works. But if you do this and this and this a certain way, you could read cards. It works. 100 years after that, 1970, Eden Gray came out with The Complete Guide to the Tarot. And in chapter 5 in that book, How to Read the Cards, she starts out by saying something. Somewhere in that chapter she says, for some reason that we don't yet understand, the cards seem to shuffle themselves, but only after you learn them fluently or something like that. So here we are. Nobody can explain why this works. Today we can. I came across this major breakthrough, I just stumbled across it around 2012. And that's when I started writing books on it. We've gone nowhere with the tarot, but in the last 50 years, with psychology, understanding the mind, we've made quantum leaps. 90% of what we know about the mind, we've learned in just the last probably 35 years. And we started looking into the way genius minds work, how they figure out their things, from Da Vinci to Einstein, everybody in between. We looked at their notes from Newton and Ford and Edison, and we looked for parallels between all these great thinkers, and we found them. And this became known as a psychological study called creative thinking. And with creative thinking, it allows us to find answers that we didn't see before, just like with the tarot cards. If I have a question and I apply a tarot reading, I don't have an answer to it. There's a good chance if I do a reading, I'm going to find an answer I didn't even think of before. And then if I follow through on that, some insight that I follow through on, and it works, that's an accurate prediction. And I'm going to look at those cards and I'm going to say, how can a deck of cards do that? And it's never been in the cards. It's a strong illusion to look at those cards like that and say, they told me this. But it really was your own mind. It was just the application you were using that allowed this to happen. Today we know that this application is something that's natural within us anyway, but we weren't aware of it, what we were doing with it. And today this is known as creative thinking. The major part of creative thinking, the biggest thing with it, is something called conceptual blending. Conceptual blending is the way the mind naturally works anyway. There was a movie in 1968 called 2001 Space Odyssey. Stanley Kubrick did the movie. I don't know if any of you remember that. High-budget sci-fi movie. First high-budget sci-fi movie. And he starts out with that movie, it's supposed to be a space movie, you know. He starts out where it says the dawn of man, and it's just a vast wilderness landscape. And it shows some primate cave people walking around. And they're just grunting and knuckle walking and all this. And there's some wild boars next to them there too, and they're just all together. And there's a skeleton of a boar there. And so this one cave guy, he's picking any little pieces of meat off this skeleton, and there's nothing, the thing's bone dry, picked clean. So he's sitting there and he looks at it and he picks up a femur bone. And he's just sitting there and he's banging it. You know, he's thinking, well, we're going to get something to eat. And he starts banging it on that skeleton. And he's thinking, and he's starting to get something in his mind. He's starting to realize, and the music starts, you know. And he starts to realize, I can use this as a tool. And he starts banging it on the skeleton. And it shows in his mind a bludgeoned pig falling to the ground after he was hit in the head with this thing. And he's got it. And he throws it up in the air. And as he's throwing it up in the air, it's twirling like this, and it twirls and it turns into a spacecraft, flying in space to the music of Strauss. And it shows that we've come from that primate to spacecraft because of our use of conceptual blending. Now, they didn't even have the term conceptual blending out yet. That didn't become an official term until 1993. That's how new thinking this is. Who uses this today? Medicine, science, technology, all your major Fortune 500 companies, branches of the government like the Pentagon, CIA, NASA, inventors, major advertising agencies. It allows us to find answers we didn't see before. You can't will a new idea to come to you. You have to find a way to make that happen. You got to use your imagination. And we're always left brain thinking, what we've learned. If there's nothing there, you got to jump out of that and get over here to the right. And that's where your imagination comes in. And imagination is the gateway to your intuition too. So the more you read tarot cards and you're using this side of your mind, the more you're developing that intuition side to it. So this is, like I say, this conceptual blending is what this is called. And it's identical to a card reading. And what it is basically you're taking something that has nothing at all to do with your question, and you're adding it to your question. Like the bone with the primate guy. He wants to eat food. A bone ain't going to help him. But he starts thinking about, I can use this for something to get food. So that's what we're doing. Taking something that has nothing to do with our question. Anything that's ever been invented was done by taking something that has nothing to do with our question and adding it to our question. This today is known as conceptual blending, and it's exactly what we do with a tarot reading. I'll give you some examples. In the 1800s, a young boy working in his father's wood shop stuck himself in the eye with an awl on accident. And the eye got infected. He lost his eyesight in that eye. The infection spread to the other eye, and he lost his other eye too. So now he's totally blind. And he's in the backyard of his house, where he lives. He's under a tree. His father's working in the backyard, and he wishes he could read a book again. And he's sitting there thinking about this, and he's just reaching around. He picks up a pine cone, and he starts feeling the pine cone, the points on it. And he's thinking about reading a book, and he says, what if they took points and put it on paper with specific patterns to represent letters in the alphabet? This way a blind could retouch the word. His name was Louis Braille, and he invented Braille. He called it a pine cone. A pine cone has nothing to do with the blind reading books. If this was a think tank right now for NASA, and we were all rocket scientists, and we were looking, let's say 1970s, we were looking to make a telescope, launch it up in space, and that's our project. Now we know how to navigate something in space, we know how to power it, we know how to send signals back to Earth from something in space like satellites. Those types of things we knew how to do. What they couldn't do is figure out how they're going to focus a telescope to look virtually light years away. A telescope focuses by extending or retracting its length. So this was a big snag for the Hubble. One of those people in that think tank was in his hotel one night, and he's thinking about this focusing thing. And he's taking a shower in the hotel. And as he's adjusting the shower head, this thing had a way of adjusting where you could open up a wide stream of water to a direct stream of water. And he's playing with the shower head. It's opening and closing. And he's thinking about the telescope, and he's thinking, what if we made a telescope that allowed light to flow through it and focus the way this shower head allows water to come through it and focus? He brought that idea up to the think tank the next day. They looked at engineers talking about it and decided that they could actually do that. The Hubble telescope was almost trashed because they couldn't figure out how to focus it until they came up with that idea. The Pentagon looking for a way to have a fighter jet shoot another fighter jet in the air. Now they're both doing 900 miles an hour. I want my missile to hit this fighter jet that's flying around. Now they know how to propel it, they know how to detonate it, they know how to design it, they know how many they could put on a plane, but how are they going to get it to hit the target? Creative thinker in that think tank said, okay, think of things you find in the desert. Just some randomness. You find cactus, you find sand, you find sunlight, you find rattlesnakes. And a typical rattlesnake in the desert is called a sidewinder. And the sidewinder rattlesnake buries itself in the sand and just waits. And when something walks by it, it senses the body heat of it. And it springs out and attacks by sensing body heat. It doesn't have to see nothing. And they said, well, what if we come up with a missile that would attract the heat of the engine and follow it? A heat-seeking missile. The first heat-seeking missile was called the Sidewinder, and it's for that reason. That's where they found the idea. The Sidewinder rattlesnake in the desert. An inventor wanted to invent a new can opener. Instead of cranking this thing all the time, he said, I would like to make a better can opener. He's in his garden one day, thinking about this, and he picks up a pea pod off the ground. He's looking at the pea pod, and he's thinking, a pea pod has this weak seam that runs along the side of it, and over time that seam will crack open and the peas come out of it. What if we made a can with a weak seam on it? You could just pop the top off. That's how that was invented. Anything that's ever been invented was always by taking something we're totally familiar with and adding it to our question, even though it has nothing to do with our question. A pine cone can't help the blind read books. A shower head can't make a telescope in space focus light years away. A rattlesnake can't help a missile hit its target. A pea pod can't open cans. But if you use these randomness and you put it with your question, your mind will find a way to make a useful connection with that by using its imagination. This is called conceptual blending. It's a very powerful tool used today by medicine, science, technology, all your Fortune 500 companies, the military, branches of the government, CIA, FBI, NASA, inventors. It's used all over the world. This application is identical to a card reading. In order to analyze any question, you have to break it apart into sections. Anything, whatever we're looking into. And you look at each position or section of that question specifically. So your question becomes like chapters of a book. That allows us to look it over. And then to find something new, conceptual blending or creative thinking technique called conceptual blending adds a random stimulus of some type to each one of those positions of the question, forcing us to make a connection somehow from our imagination on how this randomness can be associated some way with that section of my question. Imagination, Einstein said imagination is more important than knowledge. And that's why he said that. Because with just knowledge, we don't learn anything new. Using your imagination, you do. And like I said, imagination is the gateway to your intuition. So if you're a tarot reader and you're doing this, that's exactly what you're doing. You're taking a question, as it's called, a card layout. You're breaking it out, your question, whatever the question happens to be, into this card layout. Before a card is even laid into those positions, those questions are there in that layout. You add a random tarot card to each position and conceptually blend that tarot card's meaning, however you interpret it, to that position of the question. Today, that is defined as conceptual blending. If you were to talk to any creative consultant and say, this is what we do with tarot cards. Questions broken out in sections, we lay a random tarot card in each position and we interpret it in some way to that meaning of the card spread in relation to a question we're looking into. And they would say, oh yeah, it's just conceptual blending. That's done all over the world now. It's done by everybody. The tarot card has been the tarot reading has been left in the past because we never understood what we were doing. It's a natural thing that we do anyway, but now we know that. Now the psychology understands that, and they have intentional applications in place, procedures to do this conceptual blending. And those procedures are identical to a card reading. The only difference is a creative consultant will use anything in the world as a randomness. Pine cone, shower head, rattlesnake, anything here. You could think of what do you find in the hardware store? Anything in there, and, anywhere you want. What's in my top dresser drawer? I could use any of that. Where a tarot reader limits their randomness to a deck of 78 cards. But this is exactly what we're doing. And we're doing it for the same reason, to find new ideas. An idea is a prediction. We haven't done it yet. It's just an idea. We might call it your plans. We don't call it looking into the future. You all had an idea coming here today. You weren't thinking, what am I going to do in the future here? No, you just know I'm going to come over here today. And see how good you are? You predicted that, and here you are. But you should think, how did I know I was going to be here? But really, that's what we're doing. And, go ahead.
So you're saying that the tarot is used to view a solution from a different angle, or that maybe
Yes.
at the bottom it's more so than predictive?
Yes, there's no power in those cards. It looks like there is because I could have a question in my mind and I go through the procedure of what I just said about splitting the question apart into sections called the card spread, laying random tarot cards and interpreting this card to that position to regards to my question, or another card to another position for that. They're randomly selected, forcing me to make a connection somehow from my imagination. This is just a deck of cards, it's a tool. The tarot, the mystery of the tarot is never in these cards. It's been in the application that they're using with these cards. Which is why today, when I first started reading tarot cards, it was just a Marseille deck. A year later, they came out the Rider-Waite again. It was really came out in 1910, but it was never really made it. It was recirculated in 1970. Then from there, other decks came out. So today, you don't know what deck to take. They all work. And you have different authors writing different books about these cards who might say, the temperance card means this. Well, another author says the temperance card means that. Another author might say it means something else. But they all work. So if you read one book and it says something, and you read another book and it says something, you might be both successful tarot readers, and your meanings will work. It doesn't make any difference what meaning you assign these cards, as long as it's a random thing that comes up on a reading somewhere. Each one of these cards could have, is there to spark ideas for you. Whatever ideas you want to put in these cards is up to you. And we've spent so much time focusing on the symbolism in these cards. It's like the tarot saying, keep looking at me and you'll never know my mystery. Because you're looking here, you're looking at this. It's nothing to do with this, it's the application that's used. You don't need these cards. You could use things in this room and do a reading. I won't, I'm used to using the cards.
Yeah.
But, and they work just fine. You can find millions of ideas with these cards. But you can also understand what we're doing now. And for the first time in its history now, we can finally say, okay, this is what we're doing. It's used all over the place. I said earlier that, medicine, science, technology, they're using this stuff. Bill Gates is never going to call me for a reading. Jeff Bezos isn't going to come in and say, can I get a reading? No, it's not going to happen. Spielberg isn't going to call me for a reading. They have creative consultants on staff. Those are who they're talking to. So I'm thinking about coming up with this. What do you think? See what you can find out about it for me. And there's people going to work on that. Fortune 500 companies. We want to improve our product or service in a way that our competitors haven't done yet. Find something new to do with it. And they do. They don't go to a tarot reader anymore. Because 100 years ago they did. Pappas, I said, Dr. Anko Say, author of Tarot of the Bohemians. He was personal friends with the family of the Tsar Nicholas of Russia and the whole family. He knew the wife, the children, and he was their counselor. So like, oh, what are we going to do? He threw over some cards for me. And he was living there. I mean, he was part of their total thing. No world leader is going to call me up and say, I want a reading now. They got staff. I mean, they don't use a tarot reader anymore. We become outdated, and for good reasons, because now they understand this application better. The only thing a tarot reader today is really used for is smaller projects, more personal, one-on-one situations with people. Does he love me? Will I sell the house by September? Are we going to have a baby this year? These are the types of things. But nobody's coming to me and saying, should we take over Russia next year? or
That was my question, actually.
Ukraine.
yeah, yeah, right.
We don't take that to Russia, and you guys.
Well, let me check the, oh, I got an interesting prediction with that. Pappas, the Tsar, Nicholas, he was concerned about being taken over because they just lost a war with Japan. Humiliated China. Little Japan kicked Russia all over the sea. They just annihilated their navy, and so Russia surrenders to Japan. 1905. He was afraid that he was going to get taken over. The Bolsheviks were coming in, and there was all sorts of political unrest. And so he said to Pappas, how am I going to be? Am I going to be okay? And Pappas looked at it, and he gave him a reading and said, you and your family will always be protected. Well, I don't know if you know.
Yeah, didn't know.
No, they got rid of them. They buried the whole family somewhere in Siberia. So, you can make wrong predictions. People say, I make predictions. That's what I do. And I say, some of them are right, some are wrong. Obviously, if I'm a professional, I have to have a pretty good average. Otherwise, I'm not going to get too many clients. But I make, a weatherman makes predictions. Okay, 80% chance of rain. That's the best thing the weather ever did. They put a percentage on it. Instead of saying, it's going to rain today, now they say, 80% chance of rain. They got the 20%. In case it doesn't rain, they say, well, that 20% came in here, it didn't rain. But that's why we don't really do much outside of personal anymore. Because the mind now is understood better, and they have people in place that are great thinkers that can come up with ideas that we would never think of. I know a couple of creative consultants. One of them endorsed my book, my first book. He worked for the CIA and the Pentagon. He was a naval officer, retired. And he wrote a couple books on it. He was doing work for Procter & Gamble, Apple Computer, huge names. And he wrote, his last book was called Creative Thinkering. And in that book, he had one chapter on a tarot card. And he says, you can use tarot cards for this. Well, yeah, obviously that's what I'm doing. So I said, you get it, what I'm saying. He says, oh, yeah, absolutely, that's what you're doing. The way he used that is he read the tarot card. He was an author, wrote a book. He wanted to get published. He went to a publisher with his book. And the publisher says, we don't take anybody new unless they have an agent. So he said, okay. So he went to an agent, and he said, I need an agent. And the agent said, we don't take anybody new until they got a publisher. So, so he's stuck, So, yeah, so the head editor at the publishing house, whatever it was, Simon & Schuster or whatever, he talked with him about his book and all this. He said, no, we were not going to do it because you've got to have an agent. So anyway, he went to he pulled a death card out that morning. And he thought about that. And he went to the library afterwards, and there was some magazine there about printing industry or something like that. And he's just going through this magazine. It just came out that month. And he sees that the head editor of Simon & Schuster left. There was an article about it in there. And that's who he was talking to about his book. And he remembers that death card. And he's thinking, well, okay, he's gone, death card. Whole big change going on now. And he called Simon & Schuster back. And I think the first editor, his name was Mr. Smith, let's say. And he called and he says, he was using his head is what he was doing. He's called and he says, I know Mr. Smith is gone now, but Mr. Smith really liked my book and he wanted to publish it. Could you tell me where he went to? Because I got to get in touch with him so he can publish my book. The new editor told him, he says, there's no way. He says, no, we want to publish that book. He said, if you go somewhere else, we can sue you. Mr. Smith never wanted to publish the book, but he got all this information because of a tarot card. Now, Did he use the tarot card meaning that I might find in a book? No, but he made up his own ideas. And it got the book published with the new editor. So, really what I'm saying is that understanding this gives you a clearer idea of what we're really doing when you're learning tarot cards. What meanings you find for these cards isn't really that important. If you read them upside down or right side up, the reverse meaning and all this, and laying them from cutting them with the left hand, and it's not really that important. Card spreads are not really that important either. You can make up your own card spread. There's a 3-card spread called Past, Present, and Future. Everybody's heard of that one. Past, Present, and Future. 3 cards, left to right. Well, lots of times, past, present, and future isn't going to help me with anything. I can change those positions to something else. They're just aspects of my question. I could put in there strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. That would be a lot more helpful than past, present, and future. What are my strengths with this? What are my weaknesses with it? What opportunities should I be looking at in the future? Or if I wanted to use past, present, and future in another way, I could say, what in my past have I gone through that I can use for an experience for what I'm trying to do now? What am I doing in the present right now that I should be changing? What should I be doing right now in the present that will help me, that I'm not doing? What opportunities should I look for in the future? That's a lot more constructive to somebody than what happened in the past is this, what you're doing right now is this, and what's going to go on in the future is that. That doesn't help anybody today. So, for the first time in its history, we can now understand what we're doing, why it works. Makes it a lot easier to learn. And that's that. Any questions?
Yes. So, like, when you get your deck, when you got your first deck, did you get, like, was there, like, a book in it and how to read the cards or suggestions? Because I know
Usually, all tarot decks come with a little booklet.
Mm-hmm.
And in that little booklet, we'll have a definition for each card. And usually it shows a Celtic cross card spread, which is a classic spread, which I use. Mm-hmm. And that's all I think was in there. I don't remember. I remember it was Crocs and Brentanos, downtown Chicago. I jumped on the train. I was 16 years old. First, I called them up. I said, "You got tarot cards?" And they said, "Yep." I said, "Okay, will you hold the deck for me?" And I went down there and said, "I'm the guy who asked about the tarot cards." "Oh yeah, here you go. Give me the deck." And that was that. But I know I went back and bought books afterwards. And there wasn't that much material out there. And you didn't have the internet, obviously. Yeah. But my books, I got these 2 books here. I'm not selling these. But if anybody wants one, I only got 2 of them. These were not for resale. This is Amazon's my publisher. And so these are proof books for me. I say, okay, my book's done, send me a copy. And I'll look at it. So they send them with that tag, with that band going across, saying not for resale because it hasn't been okayed by me yet. So you call them up and say, yeah, okay, it's ready to go. And then I keep these. So if anybody wants one of these, I'm going to put them over there. And Madeline, you got first choice. You're the one who... You're the first. There's one person left. But anyway, yeah, when I first started reading, there was just the Tarot Marcy. And that's another thing. I always knew there was something more to it than what they're saying. They call it divination. Well, they call it divination because they can't explain why I'm getting answers here from something. They didn't understand what was going on in their own mind. They're getting these ideas from themselves by using this procedure. And again, people will say, well, what about the intuitive side of things? Well, yeah, you're using this side of the mind. You're going to develop that intuitive side. But that's where it's at. And intuition is like fishing. I say it's like fishing. I can't will intuition to come to me. I can't know what's going on in your mind right now. It might come to me, but so fishing, I can set up I can go to the right location. I can have the right tackle, I can cast right, I can work that lure right. I might not get a fish. That's up to the fish. It's got to come to me. Same with a tarot reading, or the intuitive side of things. Some days they're going to be biting. You're going to get intuitive all like crazy. Other days nothing's really happening. And that's what happens. And that's really how it works. Also with a tarot reading, people think, okay, like a Celtic cross tarot reading, that's 10 positions. And that's what I usually use. And people think, well, each position has to be some profound thing found there. No, you get one position where I see something there that's intuitive, and I say that, and I hit home with something. That's all you need. Intuition is like spice to a stew. A little bit goes a long way. Doesn't take much. And that person's going to remember that reading because of that one card, that one position. And it might be all you need to know anyway. It might be something very important. Maybe it's in the 8th position of my cross, when to act. And it says, right now, hold the phone. Don't do nothing until this happens over here. Wait till January before you make a move. That might be intuitive. And maybe that's all it took for them to be successful. That's all. So anyway, I think I've covered everything.
Okay. Vincent,
Yes.
it's actually refreshing to know that you can make it up as you go.
Yes, it is.
Well, yeah, here's my notes. Very carefully documented here. Let's see, talk about tarot cards. It's under T. Oh, it's filed under T. Card spread, filed under C. Okay. No, I don't like outline form. When you're trying to be creative about something. Yeah, you could have this all typed up, ready to go with things, but then I'm just reading.
Well, they actually, when I was a trainer, they taught us how to do mind mapping like that.
Mind mapping. That book right
That's
there.
all.
That book right there, my first book. It's called Genius of the Tarot because I was saying that, but mind mapping, very good point. I'm not the genius of the tarot. I'm saying that the tarot itself is genius. Because geniuses' mind think this way anyway. They do it automatically. But in that book, my first book, I was thinking a tarot reading is a mind map. It's a verbally expressed mind map. Mind maps are very illustrated. A tarot reading, you have the main branches of the mind map on the table in the card spread. If it's a 5-position card spread, those are 5 main branches of your mind map. The finer branches are verbally expressed from the reader. So it's a verbally expressed mind map. I said that to Mary Kay Greer. I wanted her to endorse my book, and she did. And she's now Mary Greer is a top name in tarot, and she's a sweetheart person. She's a wonderful person. She teaches, and she's also an author on fiction. She does some other stuff too, but she's a well-established name. Anyway, she says, I don't agree with you. That's not a mind map. Mind maps are very elaborate. She goes, no. She says, so the best thing I can say about your book is this. A quirky romp through the tarot with original methods of working with the cards presented by a seasoned tarot reader. That's all I can say. But at least she gave me something. But yeah, people are, it is a mind map though. It isn't. But more important than the mind map is the conceptual blending. When we take a card and add it to a section of our question and blend the meaning of this card to that aspect of the question in some way that's pertinent to your question.
Oh, so once I find a deck that kind of resonates with me, then I master that, and then I can add the oracle cards to it?
You can if you want.
Oh,
Sure.
By the way, how much is the book?
That's free.
Oh,
Sold. Sold. My books are, I'm going to give everybody my card too. My books are sold on Amazon. I got 9 books out now. I'm putting out a 10th this year sometime. Now this is 2 sides of my, I took your advice. Oh, okay, all right. And, they're all on tarot. And, but Genius of the Tarot there, that's my first book. My second book, Essential Tarot, was what I taught. By the time I finished Genius, I realized there's more to it than mind mapping. So that's when I started to write Essential Tarot, Unlocking the Mystery, and that dealt with conceptual blending. And I wrote a couple other books, Radical Tarot, Breaking All the Rules, and my last book, Bare Bonus Tarot, an in-depth study to the tarot or something. Both of those talk about conceptual blending too. But,
I have a question.
Yes.
So, well, you alluded to tarot kind of not being divination, but isn't that kind of what the conceptual blending is? It's almost like that aha moment, that almost like that divine thinking, that almost download that comes into the mind. So wouldn't it still technically be divination?
well, I think what we're getting the answers from,
Question.
yeah, that's a good one. I think divination, I think where we're getting the answers from is ourselves.
Yeah.
And divination is supposed to be coming from the divine. In other words, it's almost like saying, there's an angel up there telling me, if only I can get him to see that card means this. I don't believe that. I never did. I don't believe in spirit guides, for one thing. I don't believe in guardian angels. Now, they might be there. If they're there, they're awfully mad at me because I don't believe in them. But they might be there. I had one woman came to me at a fair. She says, I want to know what my spirit guides are telling me about something. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't believe in spirit guides. And she said, well, they're there. Just read me, you know. I'm like, whoa, okay, I'm supposed to just read you now, you know. And so I said to her, there was other readers there who used to give me a ticket. I said, I'm telling her to take her ticket and go somewhere else with another reader. And I said, if there's spirit guides, there's 15 million children die every day of starvation on this planet. I would rather have them fly over and give that one of those kids a bowl of rice than worry about just my new soulmate or whatever she wanted. And she just got up and took it back. She just left me. That was her question. Is this my soulmate that I just met? That's what I wanted. But I think what made me realize this was happening is I knew as a teenager, there's something going on here. This is not a magic deck of cards. And there's no power in these cards. So there's got to be something I'm just not seeing here. And so I was always open to that. And if it came to me, that's what I think I saw. And when I saw the creative thinking that is going on today, and it's an identical application, and it's an intentional application, just like the card reading is, an intentional application. You have a question, we're going to throw these cards out and look at it. That's intentional. And I'm using the cards to intuitively and imaginatively give me answers that I didn't see before. And that's what we're doing. So.
I have a comment to make about divination, because I was thinking something similar to what Pearson was saying.
Okay.
I've had people say that, and not just tarot, but anything, that, oh, you know what, because they're Bible-based or Christian, and this is evil, and you shouldn't be doing it, and stuff like that.
Right.
But my belief is that we are a divination. And so the fact that we are the ones providing the answers, and it is divine, and it is us. So
we're
all of
divine.
it,
Exactly.
it all agrees.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I get what you're saying. There's not something external to us that's doing it. It's us doing it, and it is the divine portion of us. It is the emanation of God in us that is doing it. And so it is us doing it, and there's not an extra thing out there doing it. It is coming from us. And so actually, we're all saying the same thing with different beliefs.
That's what I was kind of like coming to the conclusion of. I'm like, okay, I get it, yeah.
Well, what's
You're trying
nice-
to take the power back and put it back into us.
Right.
That's the most important thing.
Right.
It's such a, for me, I'm the world's biggest skeptic.
Okay.
And for me, it's a great, and it seems to me to be a really sound therapeutic tool.
It is, yeah.
Because it totally puts the onus on the person you're reading.
Mhm.
You're not reading, they're reading themselves.
Well, you're giving them ideas, and you're giving them suggestions on what you're seeing. Usually as a reader, with me anyway, person comes and sits down across from me, I know without even thinking about it, I'm already picking up something from them, just by saying hello, sit down. So that's intuitive side. And then they have a question. And usually, then that's where the intuition comes in again, is, am I here in a one-sided position of this question? Are they telling me things from their side only? And that's why I do my Celtic cross the way they do it, the way I do it. It allows me to check them and say, here's the question, here's the way you're seeing it. Is this really correct, or is there something you're missing here? And it allows me to question that. Also, I can look at what their current actions are they're taking right now, and what they're immediately trying to accomplish. Whenever something comes up in your life, we make decisions like that. And lots of times they're impulsive decisions. So numbers 3 and 4 on my Celtic cross is the actions you're taking right now, and 4 is what you're trying to accomplish immediately. First things first. Lots of times those are the wrong things. Lots of times the action, impulsively, the things how we react to something could put us in more deeper problems than if we were just left it alone. So to stop and think and clear things out and be careful about before you make any moves here. And what are you trying to accomplish with this? And then 5 and 6 positions on my cross are the asset, what they got going for them, and 5 that they should use, and 6 is an opportunity that they should be looking for as you move forward with this. It's out there, but you've got to keep an eye out for it. And this helps me cross-examine, cross-link this person. What I'm feeling from them, because as a reader, I'm asking questions constantly to them. Are you going through this? Are you doing this? Blah, 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 blah. To verify what I'm seeing. And if they tell me no, then I know I'm not reading it right. If they tell me yeah, then I know I'm on the right trail here. So that's another thing with readers. They think that they're supposed to, when people are starting out, they think they're not supposed to ask any questions. I ask a lot of questions. I want to know what's going on with you. I want to tell you what you don't know, not what you do know. And as a pro reader, it's easy because nobody's going to sit down across from you and hand you $50 or $100, just say, oh, just tell me what you see. No, they got a question they want an answer to, so they want to find answers to something, and it's important to them. So they're more than happy to tell you what's going on with them.
That kind of attitude of tell me what you see or know is what people do when they think the person is psychic or medium.
Right.
Yeah, which is a different position to be in than reading cards. And
Well, the cards do bring out intuition, but I can't control that. I mean, I use the one example as a clairvoyant. I'm clairvoyant. I live in a haunted house, and my wife and I, she's psychic, so. So the one reading I bring up, I've mentioned this on YouTube before, but the one reading I remember was a police officer, a woman. And she just wanted to know about her career. Am I going to get promoted to lieutenant or something like that? She wants a reading. She wants to know, am I going to get this promotion? What's the promotion? I don't know if she's going to get it. And so I'm looking at the cards and I'm asking her, like, how long have you been with the force and stuff like this? And is there anybody else bidding on this job and stuff? And we're talking. And as I'm talking to her, over here comes this black cat. I'm at the Sanctuary Crystals in Elsip. They're not there no more. And it's walking, stops right here, and it looks at me, and it continues to walk over to her. Now, this cat isn't really there, but I'm seeing this cat. And I see this cat, so I'm talking, and I stopped the reading. I said, do you own a black cat? And she says, I just put him down yesterday. I said, was his name Jinx? She She says, Jinxie, that was his name. I said, well, Jinxie just walked over there till he's still with you. And nothing to do with her reading. But that was a clairvoyant insight. So lots of times you get an image, or you get a sign, and you think, well, this has got to be something important. No, it doesn't have to be anything important at all. I live by McNeil Hospital in Berwyn. I'm walking down the street one night about midnight, and across a snow, rainy night, and across the street from McNeil, right on Oak Park Avenue, is a car parked there. It's not supposed to be parked there, but they had to get in the hospital for some reason. And I see a woman at the trunk of that car, in the back of the car, in the rainy, snow, slushy night, and she's got no shoes on. She's dressed real nice, has runs in her nylons, and she's pulling up her skirt or something over here, but she's staying real close to this car. But she wasn't really there. And I knew that she was just in a car accident coming from a wedding reception, and she's in that hospital, and she isn't going home. She ain't going nowhere. She's gone. And that car is her parents' car. And she's going to stay right by that car because she wants to go home. So she was confused about what's happening to her yet. I knew that. I could have went into that emergency room and said, you just lost your daughter. Well, why do that? They're going to know that anyway. I'm not going to do that. But I know that's what I just saw. And when you know that, when you see, that's what happens with intuition, with psychic awareness. I know it. I don't have to have nothing. I just know it. It's like a favorite color. I could look on this wall and say, what's my favorite color here? I said, maybe it's that light green there. And you say, well, why? You just say, I don't know. It just is. That's how much you know that what I'm seeing there is what it is. And you just get that like that quick. So that's what happens. You want to develop that? Read tarot cards is one good way because you're using that right side of the mind where the intuition is. And that's where you're using the right side of the mind where your imagination is. And your intuition is inside the imagination part, opens up a little door, and it comes out. And that's where it's at. And so it's just like a muscle. The more you use it, the better you're going to get at it. And when you do get something intuitive, you're going to know right away that's what it is. And lots of times it doesn't have to mean anything. I read a woman, I could see her aura. I see her aura on her neck is bumping out like this. I said, you got a sore throat? She said, yeah. She said, nothing to do with her reading. But I knew she had a sore throat. I saw that and I just asked her. So lots of times this is not meaningful stuff at all. Synchronicity is another thing that uses conceptual blending. Because it's the same thing. We have something that coincidentally came into our life repeatedly, and that calls it to our attention. And what's this? And we think, is this a sign of something? So we interpret it some way that becomes meaningful to something in our life that's going on right now. That's conceptual blending. A random coincidental thing here. While I got this going on in my life, I'm going to make a connection here. And this is going to become meaningful to me. I'm going to put meaning into it, to this over here, what's going on in my life. That's conceptual blending. So synchronicity can now be seen as conceptual blending too. And lots of times synchronicity doesn't have anything to do with anything. It's just a coincidence. I was reading Moby Dick. I probably read that book 3 times in my life. And as I'm reading it, I have a Starbucks coffee on the bedside. And the first mate in that book was called Starbuck. And I'm looking at that logo on the Starbucks coffee. What a weird name, Starbuck. You know, what's your name? Starbuck. Well, come on.
Who made that up?
Yeah, right, you know. So, you know, I want to name my son Starbuck. Yeah, right. So anyway, and there was the logo of that is a mermaid with waves behind her. She's in the ocean. And I'm thinking, I bet you they got that name from the book Moby Dick. And a month later, or a week later, whatever it was, I'm listening to the radio. And the host of the radio has the owners of Starbucks on there. So I'm trying to listen to this. There's two guys. And they were talking about when they first started out, and they were down in Brazil or South America somewhere on a boat. They were getting coffee beans, and they were held up for a couple of days because the beans haven't come yet, so they have to wait. In the meantime, this guy's on board the ship with the book Moby Dick. This guy's reading Moby Dick. And he says, I'm reading that, I see that name Starbuck. He says, and the name of the ship was called the Pequod. He says, so that's where I got the name Starbuck. I'm listening, saying, yes, I knew it. And they were said it was either going to be Pequod or Starbucks. We didn't know which. We went with Starbucks. So yeah, that's synchronicity, you could say. I mean, how often am I going to think about that? Not often. Did it mean anything to me? No. Just a coincidence.
Vince, I think it's all a matter of definition and use of words, because you just told us how you are able to see spirits, and yet you said you don't believe in divination. So I think it's a matter of language, because everything you have said to me says that you believe in that.
Well, I believe that...
You just don't like that word.
Well, I don't believe that they're trying to tell me anything. I don't believe anybody's really trying to tell me. I don't think there's anybody up there saying, oh, if only we can get to Vince to give him this message. No, I don't think that way.
If you can believe the notion that a tiny drop of ocean has all the properties of the sea, why can't it be the same that when Yahweh called my name, took a tiny drop of him and put it in me?
I think we're all part of it. I think we are God. I think we are God.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so your higher self, which is God, is talking to you all the time. That's the divination.
All right.
And that's why I think that you believe in the divination.
Yeah.
You don't like that word, but we're all saying the same thing. We're using different language.
But I just don't like to think that there's something besides me flying around next to me trying to tell me something. It's me.
Right.
And,
It
you know,
is us. If you believe that you are the divine yourself.
I do believe it.
Then what do you think is the purpose or the reason behind the visions that you see then?
No purpose.
The young lady was by the car, why would you be given that gift?
It wasn't a gift.
Ah.
See, it was just me walking down the street, and just for some reason, I had a sensitivity at that moment to see her.
But why?
Just like if I was walking down the street and I saw you walking down the street, there's no reason. It's just, hi.
You get what you
But I
vibrate.
don't see dead people. when I
Well-
go down the street.
Thank you.
You get what you
Yeah,
vibrate
but
with,
just
what you
because you
vibrate
do,
with.
just because you do doesn't mean it's some message that's important for you to know. I think that we're limited to our five senses in the physical body, for the most part. Sometimes, some people, all of us actually can. We can all become clairvoyant, which expands that range a little bit. So now and then, I'll get something come up to me. I don't see things all the time, but now and then I will. I'm just seeing things that are there, but my range is opened up more.
So you don't think there's a purpose behind it, like you...
I don't think there's a purpose behind it, no. I just think it's there. I can't, it's not there for me to know something. It's just, I'm witnessing it. I think that's what it is.
It's like for me, like, I was raised Catholic. I don't believe in the church and stuff like that. But when I'm in nature, I feel so connected. And I don't try to see, what does the trees tell me? What is the sun telling me? What? I see a tree with all the bark coming off of it, and the tree is white. It's light. It's divine.
Okay, yeah.
So am I. So I'm taking the bark off of me.
Well, there you go.
And being the
Now,
light
there you go.
that I am. So I see no meaning to anything. I see everything as divine, even the contracts, the wobbly people, if you will, call them that. I can see the divine in them. They're going through something, it's theirs, not mine.
Well, I like what you said about the bark going, you're getting rid of the bark on you. That's the way we metaphorically make a connection. You made a connection with a tree about what I'm doing to myself. I'm cleansing myself, shedding off this bark. That's a connection. The tree doesn't tell you that. You've made that connection. That's conceptual blending. Especially if you used it in some way that was really meaningful for a message for yourself. I do believe We are all the universe. We are witnessing and experiencing ourselves from billions of different points of view. We are one thing, but we're all different things here.
Yes.
And I do believe that, I read a lot of Alan Watts. If you ever heard of Alan Watts, he was big in the 60s.
Yeah.
And I love his stuff. But I do believe that we don't know anything, we don't know what life is yet. Someday we're going to know what life is. And we're going to be able to know that once I leave this body, where I'm going. And then the fear of death will be gone. Right now, we don't know anything about life. If I have a heart attack, if I go to my doctor today, and my doctor says, Vince, you got a heart problem. I want to schedule surgery for Wednesday. I say, okay. Tomorrow, I'm at home, I have a heart attack and die. Tomorrow's Monday. I didn't get to the hospital. So I have a heart attack and die. They can't take me to the hospital dead, give me a heart transplant, and jumpstart me back to life again, because I'm gone. Someday they're going to be able to do that. And then so they're going to be able to come back and say, oh yeah, okay, well, this is what's going on. Or we're going to have a way of going back and forth. And I think that's really the final frontier, not
I believe
space.
I have to leave this conversation.
Okay.
I am so sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's so nice to meet you. And
I will see you again.
okay,
And my husband has a concert this afternoon, otherwise I would be staying, but I have
Okay.
to leave.
This is a quote from a fortune cookie. No one grows old by living, only by losing interest in living.
whoa, there you go.
Fascinating.
Give her a card. You got a card?
She got one.
It's all right, she's
Okay, all right.
the boss of me.
Okay, I'll be back. I'll be around.
I'll
take
see
care. Okay. Yeah, well, it's so we got a lot to learn yet. As far as psychic awareness goes, we're still in the Stone Age, but we do know one thing. As far as divination, as far as with the tarot cards, at least we know what we're doing with the cards now. It was never anything dark powers or mystical. It's our own mind. Now we know we're doing this in huger projects than the tarot card readers ever doing. We're doing this for NASA, we're doing this for the Pentagon, we're doing it for Federal Express, for IBM or Apple computers, but we're,
Well, hopefully we're doing it for world peace and water for everybody and food.
that would be good, yeah.
So it's like if I were applying for a job and they were looking for skills, I could put something like conceptual blending on there if I'm a tarot reader.
I would put conceptual blending is a technique of a creative thinker.
Yes.
Okay.
So I would say creative thinker.
Yeah.
If you were looking for a job and you wanted to be, say you wanted to be you say you're a tarot reader, you could say that. If you wanted to say you're an intuitive counselor, that to me sounds a lot better, because that would encompass creative thinking
Right.
and tarot. If you wanted to say,
Well, I'm just saying like that would be like a tool that I would be able to take from like tarot cards. Like, so you would say instead of conceptual blending, what was the word that you used?
creative thinking, creative consultant, right. And that's what's hired now by the heavy hitters.
So you mentioned something about intuitive counseling,
Mhm.
something.
Yeah,
Okay, so I was really considering going back to school to get like a counseling certificate, because I love humanities so much.
you won't find that in college.
Yeah, I already know.
You can't get a bachelor's degree in intuition. I wish you could, but someday you will be able to. Someday we're going to be able to do it.
That would be so.
I won't see it,
My
but
experience.
you'll be able to someday, yeah.
I also wanted to mention that creative thinking is what we all do every day.
Yeah.
Because your thoughts are what create. So you get what you think about whether you want it or not. And the things that you said that you saw, and you said, why did I see them? It had nothing to do with the reading. It had everything to do with the reading, because now you had some insight into that person and you won their confidence by the fact that you knew those things about them without them telling you. So it had everything to do with your credibility with that person. And if that person had doubts, the universe just gave you a way to connect with them and have them feel comfortable with what you were sharing with them.
Well, you know what, for the initial reading, yes. If I tell somebody you're going to get, let's say that woman with the cat, if I say, I see you getting the promotion. Focus on your experience, on what you've done, or something, whatever I'm seeing. Focus on this or that when you go for your job interview, because I see them evaluating this. And she gets the job. Well, when she walks away from me, she isn't going to know if I'm right or not. But if she gets the job, then she's going to come back to me and say, you're right. Now, I do a lot of annual festivals, or I used to do them. And what's nice about them is you got the same people coming back every year. Like you do a festival, we did Eyes to the Sky in Lisle, the 4th of July festival. And so every year you got those people from Lisle, they're coming back to the festival. And, oh, we got to get a reading this year. And so you tell them something this year, well, they come back next year and say, last year you told me this and this and this and it happened, or whatever. So you get feedback, because you get these people that come back to you, and they remember you, where your booth, where you were, and that's nice. But if I'll give you an example of I use one example, and this is going on YouTube, and I've already talked about this, but I'll talk about it again. I've got a young guy, single guy, good-looking guy, wanted to work a cruise ship. And they were having group interview downtown Chicago with 100 people in the room. And you got some guy for Norwegian Cruise Lines, a high-class cruise line. Yeah. And they're coming, and he's asking them, what do you want to do about, what's your name? What's your degree? You got a college degree? What's your name? And they just went back around like this. And people that they thought were interesting enough to go further, they would call and then come in for another interview. So he wanted to know, I'm going to go for the interview. Am I going to get the job? I said, of course you're going to get the job. I'm going to tell them, no, you're not going to get the job. Don't even bother. No, I'm not going to say that. So yeah, you get the job. Of course you're going to get it. Go down there. And so he went down there, and he comes back a couple weeks later. He said, I didn't get hired. I said, why not? What do you mean you didn't get hired? And he had these anchor, I think they're called, wrist braces on. And anchor, I think they're called. I don't know. Anyway, he had carpal tunnel. He had one on each wrist. And I said, you didn't get the job? And I'm looking at the cards, and one of the cards showed me a chariot card. He's holding the charioteer. He's a charioteer. He's got these armored wrist things on his wrist. And I look at those things on his wrist, and I said, were you wearing those on that job interview? He says, yeah, I got to wear them here for a couple. I said, go back and do it. I said, they're doing another interview thing? He says, yeah, they're doing one this week. I said, go back and do it again. Take those things off your wrist, you'll get hired. He says, oh, I can't go back. They already saw me once. I said, well, then go back anyway. What are they going to do? Beat you up because you went in for a second? Go back and try again. And he took them off, and he got hired. And so was that intuitive? I don't know. I know it was good advice, and he did get hired. He was working Norwegian Cruise Lines, Hawaiian Islands. Nice job. You know, all because I saw the chariot card, and I saw those things on his wrist. On the chariot card, I saw those things on his wrist there. I said, go back and apply again, they'll take you.
I think what you did, you gave him confidence, and so his vibration was higher when he went back, and he had the confidence, and he got hired.
Well, I know taking those off was a big thing, because that guy's doing those speed interviews. He's looking at that, he sees those things on the wrist, and it's confusion. I'm not going to bother with this guy, going to this guy. That's all they're going to do. They're not going to even give him another thought. Because I don't know what that is. I'm not going to bother with you. I got 99 other people in here. I'm going to look at them.
Exactly.
But take those things off your wrist and go. And that's what he did.
And so it's all connected.
Sure, yeah.
So everything you see makes a difference with the people that you interact with. The things that you say, oh, it has nothing to do with the interview. I'm like, it has everything to do with the interview.
Well,
and you wouldn't be seeing it.
Maybe, you know, but it is all connected, and I think that we have opportunities every day. We just don't see them to do all sorts of things. They just go right by us, you know.
Yes.
And that's why I like number 6 position on my Celtic cross, because there I say, this is the opportunity. You're trying to do something here. This position is an opportunity that's going to help you. And if I see something there, and that's an intuitive position, because I'm saying, I see a person, or I see an opportunity with this, I see this coming in, you're gonna get a phone call, or something. Now they're gonna be keeping an eye out for that. It ain't gonna blow by them anymore, because now that when it happens, they go, oh, wait a minute, he told me to what, there's something here. And that helps them spot an opportunity that they would have not probably seen before. So it helps them. Anyway, I hope you all like this. I'll be doing more stuff over here, I hope, Madeline. We'll talk about that. And
I have a question.
sure.
Well, I know we're in November.
Yeah.
So, and I know it's gonna be a while before, I don't know if next year you guys, are you gonna be here as readers for like when they or Saturday or like that?
I don't know if I'm going to be doing readings or not. I don't know.
Does Linda do readings?
Yeah.
Okay.
We might, I don't know if she's going to want to do readings either. We read right now at the Quest bookstore in Wheat.
Oh,
I'm a
okay.
house reader there on Saturday.
On Saturdays?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And I also do some talks there in the main building. But Linda was reading there, but then when COVID hit, she stopped.
Okay.
And now she's going to be coming back again. We'll both be there on Saturdays.
Oh.
And I don't know what SoderWorld has here. So they might have fairs, and maybe Madeline might say they invite you to come and read. I don't know. We'll see.
Or we can schedule it, or you can take appointments if you want.
Okay. Yeah. We'll talk about it. We'll see. And I also do. My website has a lot of the information. I also do private mentoring and over the phone or Zooms. What's so nice about the Zoom meetings now? I mean, I could do a Zoom meeting for somebody in Ireland, maybe a private counsel, like mentoring, tarot. I could record it and then set it in my Zoom and my YouTube as a private YouTube where they can get it, but it's not out there for everybody. So while we're talking, they're getting this, but if they want to go back and watch it again, they can do that. And that's golden, because you could watch the same thing over. It's not we talked about it once, okay, goodbye, see you later. No, they can go back and listen to it over and over again.
Because they're gonna discover something new every time they listen to it.
Right. Which is sort of bad for me, because they're not going to call me for another session. I don't need it no more. I watch this one over and over again. I know everything now.
I don't want new stuff.
It's worked out good. It's worked out good.
But I really believe everything that you receive is valid and important, and otherwise you wouldn't be getting it.
Exactly.
That's what life's about.
I had, laying in bed once, I sleep on my stomach. I sleep face down, usually. So I'm laying there and I'm half asleep, and someone pokes me on the shoulder, like this, and they say, "What are you doing?" Whoa, who was that? Linda's asleep. Somebody just poked me. What are you doing? I don't know who it was, and I don't know what they're trying to tell me. I don't know what I was doing so wrong with anything, but obviously somebody thought whatever I was doing was the wrong thing to do. So sometimes you get messages and you don't know what they are.
Maybe they were saying you should be getting up and get up.
I said, no, I just went to sleep. I just got to sleep.
I
But-
get knocks on the door at like 2 in the morning, and I'm like, come in. You know, and that's when I started begging people within myself.
One thing I'll say with especially with intuition is if you are, the intuition, you don't get up here and stay up here. It goes like this. So you'll be times where you're very sensitive up here, and then you go down and you're really grounded now. And then you go up here and you're real sensitive again. And the one way you could tell you're more psychic awareness is because when you have psychic awareness, you have a lot of feeling in you. You feel for life. You have a lot of feeling for life. You see roadkill on the street, it really bothers you.
Oh my
Or
God.
you hear about bad news and it's like, oh gosh, that's terrible. Where when you're grounded, it doesn't really bother you as much.
Yeah.
And that's when you know you're sensitive. Because I'm really feeling everything now. It's just like I get all this feeling. And And things will bring that on. If you get involved with being creative in some way, where you take a painting or something, and you're by yourself a lot, it helps your feelings come out. What's really worse, the worst thing that is wonderful, but the worst thing that somebody's a psychic or intuitive counselor is getting involved in a relationship. Because that grounds you. You're down here now. Because you're thinking about going to the mall with your girlfriend or your boyfriend, or going to have dinner tonight, we're making plans together. You're never alone. You're both together. So you're really grounded down here. You're not up here all by yourself anymore. So it's a wonderful experience, but it's going to be a time where you're really grounded, you know. So yeah, when you're alone and you're by yourself, you're in here a lot. You're in here. You're talking to yourself. And you're thinking about things all by yourself. I did a painting, or I did, and it was called The Shaman. It was a cave art painting of an elk, half man, half elk, and he's standing like this, and he's looking like this. He's got antlers on. It was from a cave. It's a famous cave art, and so I decided I'm going to repaint this thing, and I had done this. Really primitive type music, drums and rattles and stuff. And I'm painting this, and I'm thinking I'm making the same lines that some guy did on a cave 10,000 years ago right now. And I'm painting this guy, you know. And I finished it, and I put it against the wall, and I'm just looking at it. And that music's going. And this guy starts dancing on the canvas. He's just dancing. I'm just like, whoa, that was cool.
That one.
He's looking at me and he's dancing. Those types of things don't happen when you're grounded. But he was moving on that canvas to me. Anyway,
Nice.
this was fun, and I had a good time. I hope you all did too. I'm taking my pine cone. That's right. Take my pine cone, I'm going home. Right. Thank you. Thank you. I made a staff. I got to show you my staff. I'll bring my staff next time.
Oh, you made your own staff?
Yeah, I made my own staff.
I went to Chef Shawana and I got my dad a staff and it's a spiral.
Oh.
And then I'm like, here, but didn't you do that? I go, well, yeah, but she's in